Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Debate Club. This is a platform where we engage in healthy debates and discussions every week. The topic for this week is Beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Agree or disagree? There are basically two stances on like the most extreme ends of the spectrum. That is, beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, and that on the other end, it is that beauty is objective and it does not change based on like the beholder's perspective, right? So first, let's look into the potential arguments that there are for people who believe that beauty is indeed in the eyes of the beholder. So that is that beauty is very subjective, and what people perceive as beautiful in terms of people, objects, experiences is based on their own individual experiences, their backgrounds, their cultures, and the kind of upbringing they've had. It is also tied to some kind of emotional and sentimental values. For example, psychologically speaking, people, uh, those people who are attached or have a sentimental connection with a particular thing or an experience tend to perceive that as more beautiful. Like, for example, people having nostalgia, people think nostalgia is beautiful, but nostalgia might be different for everybody, right? uh, Most people don't get nostalgic about the same thing. It's different, right, based on the experiences they've had in their in their past or something. And then there is a psychological perspective, and there is cognitive biases influencing how beauty is perceived. And then there is the point of artistic expression. People express art in different ways, and each of them is beautiful, right? Because artists are very diverse people. The same thing can be portrayed as like a million other things. And forget the artists, even the people who are perceiving it perceive it in very different ways than the artist may have intended it to be perceived. And then the same thing could be beautiful and not beautiful to somebody based on how they perceive it. And then there is the constance where people believe that beauty is more objective than it is subjective, and it is not in the eyes of the beholder. So there in this case, it is tied to the universal standards of beauty and how certain features are considered universally more appealing. And there are biological factors that tend to that we are kind of wired to perceive some things as beautiful because of our evolutionary psychology for reproductive and survival reasons, right? And then because I think biologically we are wired to perceive the person who looks like they are more probable to have children and to extend our lineage, they are perceived as more attractive biologically. That is something that we're hardwired with. And then there is cultural influence. Now, while culture might differ, there has been a lot of globalization involved, and beauty standards are becoming more uniform. And then media also represents certain types of things to be more beautiful than others. So there is that. And then there are social constructs, there are norms and trends, and a lot of peer pressure around beauty, which leads to making one kind of face or person or experience more beautiful than other. And then there is consensus and recognition. What is more familiar and more recognized also tends to become more mainstream and hence perceived as more beautiful. That was the general context I wanted to set before we get into the debate. So, with that context in place, we'll now start the debate. And if you want to speak, you'll have to use the reaction button to raise your hand. Thank you. Yes, please, Samarth.
Yeah, first, in understanding what this phrase "beauty is in the eyes of the beholder," what it means, uh, let's first categorize our evaluation of what an aesthetic judgment is. Uh, uh, Whether that aesthetic judgment it might involve a work of art, or that aesthetic judgment it might involve uh, uh, how we perceive another person with respect to how good looking they are or not. or it can be like some like naturally occurring phenomena such as rainbows, waterfalls, and how we look at them. So in all of these qualities, like in all of these instances, well, obviously this aesthetic judgment is involved. So now, what are the dimensions of this aesthetic judgment? So it can be, so it will involve both the dimensions of objectivity and subjectivity. So given this two dimensions, like how are we gonna categorize the aesthetic judgment with respect to these two dimensions? So one can say like it is entirely subjective, and then you can say it is like entirely objective, and then you can say it's like a combination of both subjective and objective. Now, coming to this particular phrase, beauty is in eye of the beholder. What it is trying to like say is that this beauty is like entirely subjective, is what it's trying to say. So, so this argument it is making rather the extreme claim that it is like entirely subjective, and it's not a combination of objectivity and subjectivity. Because like if you look at the people who are claiming each of these three things, no, either entirely objective or entirely subjective, or a combination of objective and subjective, I don't think there is any reputed philosopher that ever existed who claimed that the perception of the beauty is like entirely objective. Either they have claimed that it is either entirely subjective, or it is both a subjective combination of subjectivity and objectivity. So, and that is the position that I'll be taking to, that it is a combination of objectivity and subjectivity. So hence I will be arguing that this statement, this beauty is in the eyes of the beholder, although it encapsulates a part of reality, it describes a reality to a certain extent, it is like ultimately wrong. That is what the position I'm gonna take. So how I'll arrive at this position is like, first I want to explore like how we consider like any of the aesthetic things, or how we uh, arrive at aesthetic judgments in the first place. Taking for example a work of art. So let's say we have like a work of art, in particular this pictorial representation such as paintings or sculpture. Now, what is the aim at painting and sculpture done for an artistic purpose, not for like in the medical textbooks. Well, in the medical textbook, we have like the pictorial representation for the pinpoint accuracy of the real thing. But now we are talking about the pictorial representation for the case of aesthetic, aims. So in that case, the depiction of the objects in this case, it's not exactly for the accurate or realistic depiction of the objects. It's not entirely that one. Well, if that were the aim, if the aim was entirely to just depict the real thing accurately, realistically in the painting, then that would mean that any random photograph that would trump the best of paintings in aesthetic value. So it's not that, but rather the evaluation of any painting, it will be necessarily tied to the emotional impact it has. And by their nature, the emotions are subjective. So in this way, there is a subjectivity in the aesthetic judgment. Okay, so at the same time, this evaluation of the painting, it will also be tied to the actual formal qualities of the painting. Formal qualities such as this balance, proportion, and harmony that is achieved through the use of line, color, and shape, which gives rise to the emotional impact in the first place. So this aspect, it is what indicates an objectivity in the aesthetic judgment. So in the evaluation of any work of art, there is an interplay between the subjective and objective aspects of of the work of art. So, that is true of the contemplation of any natural occurring phenomena, like I just mentioned. So there is this interplay of subjective and objective aspects, and neither of these objects, it can be entirely eliminated in my perspective. I've talked for a while now, and maybe like other people can jump in and give in their views.
Thank you, Samarth. I kind of agree on beauty being like an interplay of subjectivity and objectivity. Like, seriously, if you look at it that way, we are hardwired to find some things appealing, but then other things are based on our preferences and our experiences. So that really shapes, in some cases, how we perceive things. I mean, as beautiful or otherwise, right? So, thank you for the input. Anybody else who would like to go ahead?
I'll just add to the statement of yours, Rose, that how you said that, like, some of the evaluations that can be made, they're like more objective, and some of the evaluations that are more subjective, like, there are some things that can be like objectively measured, and then there are other things which are more of a subjective kind. So, this brings us to the comparison of art with respect to other domains of human endeavor, like, for example, math and science. We are not, debating about whether the findings in the math or science are they somehow subjective,
Mm-hmm.
because we all know that the mathematical statements, those are objectively true. And also in science, whatever the measurements we're going to make with respect to, like density, volume, those are objectively true. But coming to this particular topic about art, like, so that is where it becomes problematic. Like, again, as I said, like, if you look at one of the more famous paintings, like, why we give it so much importance in the first place, it is because of the huge emotional impact that it has on us. So there is necessarily a subjective element to that one. But then, if you're gonna like study about the painting and then ask the question, why is it causing the emotions in the first place? Why that particular painting and not, you know, the the efforts of a random person with respect to, let's say we have a painting by a random person, or the scribblings of a 5-year-old. So why is the painting, this masterpiece painting, causing an emotional impact in us and not the scribblings of the 5-year-old? So if we try to answer that question, then we'll come up with that answer will probably take the form of, like, that is because of the shape of the objects in this masterpiece. It's due to the color, and it is due to the proportions of the various details in the painting, and it is due to the harmony of the painting, the harmony of the various details of the painting. So we are like trying to get at objective things about the painting, which separates it from, like, as I said, some random painting. And so you can see like how just ingrained in this effort is the sense of objectivity. And agreed, this objectivity in art, it's not the same as the objectivity in the science or the art that I previous sorry, it's not the same as the objectivity in science or mathematics that I previously mentioned. But it is a form of objectivity in itself. So that is why I would say that rather than dismissing like objectivity in art entirely and confining it only to the spaces of mathematics or science, we got to also look into the aspect of the objectivity in art in its own way. Yeah,
Right.
so that will be
Mm.
my take for the time being.
Thank you, Samarth. Mahadev, please go ahead.
Yeah, hello, good morning. Uh, first, uh, first of all, this sentence was introduced to me my aunt, beholder of eyes, beauty. So, what I would like to add is, as Samarth made his point that everything is beautiful in one's own way, I also support him with the same opinion. Rather, there are some different nuances regarding to the context I would like to create. And So, as you said, there are two things, that is art and science. One is subjective and one is objective. In my how I portray this things is basically uh, initially in my personal opinion, initially there is only art. Science is discovered through art. So definitely there is beauty. That beauty is viewed in objective point of view in terms of art uh, when the scientists discovered this cloning mechanism, then subjectively each like let me explain with an example. uh, Orange, when we open the orange, we try if we try to enjoy every drop of the orange, then we find the beauty in everything else. If we eat the orange and we will just mind with our own business, then we find, okay, yeah, it's beautiful, everything is beautiful. So that's the difference, maybe in my point of view. If you want to relish everything, if you that's what makes one as an artist. If you So human, in my humble opinion, human first is an artist, then only is a scientist. So he relishes everything and discovers something, and may consequently he puts them in order to publish his work to the world. That makes him a research scholar or scientist. So basically, beauty is present in everything. That's what art says. If you want to get into subjectively, if you talk about science, since it's becoming vast subject, we tend to ignore the beauty which is already discovered previously, and we tend to forget the past, and we just uh, stumble ourselves in some pitholes or something. So as he said, uh, everything is beautiful in its own way. We need to have that we need to know the past before using something. That's what my point is.
All right. Thank you, Mahadev. There's this thing that Samarth was saying. Uh, what makes certain art more beautiful and appealing to us, and what arouses more emotion in us? Like, he gave an example of some masterpiece that's pretty famous versus a 5-year-old scribblings, right? So I think one mainstream example would be Van Gogh's Starry Night, right? Like it's very mainstream. You see it on social media, you see it in most art galleries. I think it comes down to the fact that as humans, we perceive whatever is familiar as beautiful. Faces, experiences, objects, right? Geographical places, right? Based on our experiences, uh, we tend to perceive familiarity as beautiful. I think that is the case with Starry Night. Like, that is one example I can come up with because it is so mainstream, it is all over social media, and it is talked about. There is people making phone cases based off of it. There's interpretations, there's poems that are written based on it as inspiration. There's a lot. I think that is one of the most mainstream art pieces right now, right? And there was recently also a Van Gogh art exhibit in Bangalore, if anybody remembers it. So I think familiarity also plays a great role in what we perceive as beautiful or attractive or appealing. So I was wondering what you guys think about that.
Sure, Rose.
Yeah,
Like,
Okay,
yeah, please.
Mahadev.
please go ahead, Madhav. Yeah, you please talk first.
Definitely, once human beings are inquisitive in nature, if we find something fascinating, definitely initially it will be very good. But to sustain the determination to know something, to dig deeper, we need to find it more beautiful. Uh, so we'll get familiar. But one thing, why do we get into why does the beauty initially find fades away? Maybe my view on my take on this is mind needs diversity. So we need to we the art needs to update itself. For that only we are we are making ourselves comfortable with science and technology, but we are not applying the science and technology which was maybe used in previous times, like Leonardo da Vinci. He used the science to make the art beautiful, like he used to dissect the bodies. He means I also don't know much, but I just want to put mention him. Like Leonardo da Vinci, Aryabhatta, all these past people, the Charaka, the great scholars of Indian civilization, they used the science to make art more beautiful and present some marvelous thing to the world, uh, which fascinates the public. So basically, the essence of art is to make public make the people fascinated and make the people familiarized through the art, like entertainment and the kingdoms, the people previously, like the zamindar system or other kingdoms. Suppose I am living in a village here. I am living near river Godavari. We study about river Godavari very prominently in our textbooks, but here people, they don't regard so much towards Godavari because they see that things daily. They already got familiar with these things. But when the government, state government, central government tries to introduce some new scheme, they uh, they gets uh, they get more attention towards it. Okay, this is our place, we need to get more familiar about it. So basically, we the environment we are living it has to invoke or arouse some input to increase the beauty that is already recognized through science and technology. That's how we can make familiarize the uh, common man or any layman who wants to indulge more in this art beauty. I know
Very,
it's a
yeah,
bit
it's
complex. I
very
just want to.
interesting. Yeah, it takes like a few moments to wrap your head around it, but it's quite interesting. Samarth, please go ahead.
Yeah, like both of you people like brought very wonderful points, like how Mahadev talked about how like just the everyday things that we observe around us, like even though it might be beautiful, its appeal tends to lessen over time. Like we have this saying like familiarity breeds contempt, and that is so true. And if we become familiar with like even like what we consider as like what we initially considered as beautiful, like our regard towards that one, it decreases with respect to time. Like that is like the fact of the human existence. So like just we can observe, like many of the the musical masterpieces like that were created like centuries ago by Mozart or Beethoven. uh, i- so there's like a lot of difference between your experience of it when the first time you heard, and now like all of those many of those have been used as like ringtones or whatever, and we have like heard them like n number of times in various mundane situations, and that has decreased its kind of appeal to us. So like yeah, so our regard towards these masterpieces, it will decrease with our familiarity. So therein you can talk about the subjective aspect of the aesthetic experience. But then, like, if you're gonna evaluate why it was these masterpieces, that why are these these pieces of art that eventually became masterpieces, and why not some other pieces of art? you know if you actually try to engage in this discussion, you might come up with various answers. So one of the answers that might arise is like how the things that are like popular right now, for example, the paintings that we talk about right now, whether it is Van Gogh or it is Da Vinci, they are like Western European people who lived some time ago, and they became popular during the time of the European domination over the world. So that is one of the popular answers that is given at the time being, that the reason that these paintings became famous, it was it is at least partly due to their views of their cultural views or their aesthetic standards becoming somehow the universal norm. Eh, you know so so one might agree to that one and say that uh, these cultural forces, they are like a partial factor in these pieces of art becoming gaining worldwide recognition. But if someone is going to uh, make the stronger claim that the success of these masterpieces is almost entirely due to them being a product of Western invention, that is where it gets tricky and troublesome. Because we might ask why is it that these pieces of work, they got elevated in the Western mind, and not some other pieces of work that was produced by the Westerners themselves, right? So then we'll have to discuss about what did the Westerners themselves hold as a standards of beauty, and why these masterpieces by Mozart and some of the others, they gain the upper hand and not some of the obscure pieces which you don't know about. So we'll have to actually get into what their aesthetic standards were, and how much uh, how do they hold under scrutiny. And if we do not agree to their aesthetic standards, then what aesthetic standards do we have to offer in opposition to that one? So there will be an a contention between, let's say, these various aesthetic standards, and I don't see like this non-conventional like standards of beauty like coming off too well in that contention. So that will be my take on that one. And also, I just want to add. So we just assume that because some masterpieces are popular, and that is why they are beautiful. So it can be the other way around too, And I would say in most of the cases it is the other way around. At least of the old masterpieces, the other way around in the sense that they became popular because they were beautiful. It can be seen that way too, and also uh, how the line of argumentation that evolutionary science, it shows us that having certain features in humans, it confers like an evolutionary advantage in survival and reproduction to humans, and those features are termed as aesthetic. I don't think evolutionary science or any other science says anything of that sort. What it says is, the evolution, it benefited some features in humans over others. That is it. And these features can be like objectively beautiful, and that is why the humans possessing this objectively beautiful qualities, they gained like an evolutionary advantage over other humans. So it can be seen that way too. So there is always this philosophical contention that necessarily comes into this argumentation. And And I don't see like how the scientific viewpoints, although it can contribute to such an argumentation, I don't know how it can resolve that contention one way or the other. Yeah, that will be my talk for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Samarth. You talked about certain features being more attractive and something like that. That reminded me of this recent happening, right? So I'm not sure how many people know of this, but then there has been a rising obsession, if you will, with people's facial symmetry and features that are, perceived as scientifically more beautiful. I think due to this whole facial symmetry thing, I think Bella Hadid, the model, was somehow ranked at the as the most scientifically symmetrical or beautiful face. I'm not highly educated on this topic, but I think that was all over social media for some time. And this Euphoria actor who's played Nate Jacobs. I think his name is like his real name is Jacob Elordi. So basically, he doesn't have like the perfect facial symmetry or anything. But then a lot of people perceived him to be very attractive, which was apparently very wild, and I don't know, it was a wild thought for most people who were, kind of with this thing where they perceive that the only thing that makes a person very attractive or otherwise was facial symmetry. I think it was all over TikTok only a few months ago. So there is that. While some things are very objectively beautiful to us as humans, cases that don't conform to such standards can still be beautiful. Like, this is one very recent example for the same. I think most of us find Bella Hadid, who was ranked as this scientifically very attractive face, to be very beautiful. Like, I think most of us, if not all, find her to be very attractive physically. And then there was Jacob Elordi, I think that is his name. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And then people went crazy over him being perceived as attractive because he did not have that said facial symmetry. So that was one example that randomly popped up in my mind. I'd love to know what opinions you have on this.
Right. Discussing about these topics of like facial attractiveness, it can suddenly become very contentious because the whole topic, it is surrounded by such controversy. It is rather safe to talk about like objectivity in works of art, in a painting or a music, than a facial attractiveness, because like how uh, whether in facial attractiveness or like bodily attractiveness, if you're going to talk about objectivity in them, the topic suddenly turns contentious because people's emotions are so bound up with them. So I think that kind of clouds like our rational thinking with respect to these aspects, and people would be better off discussing about objectivity in art, just to avoid such contentious topics. And like. Uh, so even with respect to objectivity in any manner, whether it is in art or whether it is like in objectivity in aesthetic standard of humans, like we got to be clear about what is the exact claim that we are making. Are we saying that all of the aesthetic standards, like all of them, they do not have like any basis in objectivity, or is it that some of the standards are like more shaped by culture and others are like more universal? So we got to be clear in that one. Like if someone like says that some of the aesthetic standards, like they have like an origin in some of the cultural forces that dominated our society during a particular period of time, I would not have any contention with that one. I would only have the contention with the larger argument that all of the aesthetic standards, whether with respect to humans or with respect to any works of art, if all of the standards are deriving from this cultural domination for certain viewpoints, so that is where I would have like a contention.
Yes, please, Mahadev.
Yeah, I would like to means I would like to highlight few amplify few points. We were this means I'm not objecting your point of views. I would like to raise that we are more discussing more towards Western words. We are getting more. We're so how why can't we start some new blog or business blog that emphasizes our own Indian thought or something like this. This was the first thing I want to discuss, and after that,
You're on mute, Mahadev.
yeah, in Bengaluru, when I was staying in Bengaluru, there was an art exhibition. It was about Kumaraswamy. Uh, Kumaraswamy, he is from Sri Lanka. He is also some related to freedom fighter. Uh, so it was an art exhibition. In that, he discussed about why why are ancient sculptures or ancient that cultural heritage has disappeared along the over the ages. He emphasized more points on the ignorance of the public due to their lack of self awareness. Why war? So why are we getting this? Why? Because without curiosity we are just doing the job, we are just doing the service without knowing the essence of the work we are doing. We're just imbibing in the rat race or something. Why the agriculture has lost its glory in the country. So in that art exhibition, he emphasized about the one point I would like to share. The while British were ruling India since 1767 to 1857, there was no problem because they were slowly creeping into the country and they were slowly introducing some new mechanisms that would uh, that would hypnotize our rulers and make our rulers towards the Western thinking that divide and rule all the things. But the first time the Indians got the unity and protested against British was in Sepoy Mutiny. Why? Because the Britishers they made fun of our culture. That is it is in Mangal Pandey, that movie. He shares something. So when we when we try to modernize our culture, then only I think the beauty of our country, our environment will be prevailed. This is the second point I would like to make.
If you're still speaking, you're on mute.
And the third thing is let me tell you. Suppose suppose Miss Rose, you might be staying in Mumbai and Samarth might be staying in Kolkata. But we when we see something very beautiful, we all connect towards it magically. How does that happen? Basically, because there is someone who created it so that all the things that might be connected. He created it. The thing I would like to emphasize is here is poet Kalid about Kalidasa. He said that. Don't make me recite poetry to those who do not love art. This was the statement made by him because he was doing some marvelous work, but it's not getting it's not reaching the public. Nowadays, translation medium is sort of thriving. It's okay. Nowadays, our Sanskrit texts and the local language Bengali, wonderful Bengali things like Gurudat ji also made some Devadas or all those things. They're getting translated. So why can't we, rather than exploring more, even now in our city, in our villages, where we discuss about tribal Modi, PM Modi, this Yodhana scheme, tribal scheme, there are more Christian schools who are evangelism, who are more prevalent in tribal areas in India. So how can this be eradicated? Maybe we need to develop our ancient text and translate. Most of these things is happening in abroad, I feel, because many US companies are publicizing our ancient texts, but the reach is minimum. Only thing is, if we incorporate some new subject like Sanskrit, or incorporate some new, like there is some village in Bangalore, in Karnataka, you might be knowing it. They Mattur or something, they only speak in Sanskrit. And also there is also some other experimental community near Puducherry, Auroville. They're also they are trying to explore this ancient methods of living which were incorporated in Indus Valley civilization. And also there is some other things such as Sholai, GD Krishnamurti school. He also, in that also, apart from the government, they are making their own electricity. They are making their own water supply, the water service. They are not part of the Indian government. They are making their own autonomous organization, which will promote the Indian thought, or which will promote the unity in diversity. So they are trying to promote the beauty which has been ignored by the mm, maybe Gen Z. So that's what I want to make. We need to get the mechanisms that makes us autonomy. I don't know solution, but I just want to make my point of view here. That's what we are for, right?
From what you were saying, it just feels like you want to like emphasize and bring the cultural aspects of beauty into the mainstream. Is that what you wanted to say? Like, to sum it up, is that what your point was?
Yeah, definitely. We cultural aspect of the beauty should be acknowledged by every citizen of the country. Then only we can behold the beauty that's present.
Mm-hmm. But then, somewhere along the lines, you said that the only way to preserve this beauty culturally going forward is to modernize it. But then, modernize somehow has become synonymous with westernize these days. What do you have to say about that?
Suppose let me tell you an example. Suppose there is an artist. Suppose if you said that you are staying in Bangalore. Previously in 2000s, these artists used to draw the diagrams of this Deve Gowda on walls. Now, uh, if we try to make that art and modernize it, we need to use Photoshop. And Photoshop, they won't only they can make that precision on the Photoshop also. Even if we if we learn the Photoshop and make Devegowda picture on the, and we publish it on the uh, for propaganda, the picture made by them should match with our picture. That's called that's what modernization I meant. uh, am I clear?
Yes, but
It
doesn't it feel
was
like we've
fumbling.
kind of gone into like a tangent of the topic?
Okay. uh, uh, okay,
I mean, coming
modernization.
back to like subjectivity and objectivity, I think, it's okay to talk about like the physical beauty aspect when it comes to human beings. It's quite controversial, but then not talking about it would be like ignoring the elephant in the room, don't you think?
Oh, yes.
That is absolutely true. So it is a controversial thing to talk about, objective beauty standards in humans, but then it cannot be ignored because, as I said, it's like the elephant in the room. Now, as to the present beauty standards, how many of them are like actually objective? If you look at that one, I think at least some of them would hold under scrutiny. Well, not all of these standards, but at least some of them would hold under scrutiny, because I think some of the aesthetic preferences, they're not just shared by humans, but other mammals too. I think I read or heard somewhere that even among other mammals, that those mammals prefer like symmetrical features in their like reproductive partners. So I think like that is how deeply ingrained our preference is for certain facial or bodily features, in the people with whom we become friends or with whom we become partners. So if people hold preferences towards their partners being like more athletic, or them being having more symmetric features, or them having a certain uh, their face being shaped a particular way, I think it goes much that is much more deeply ingrained than most people would like to acknowledge.
Right. So basically, like not just humans, but other mammals are also inclined towards symmetry biologically.
Correct, correct. So at least on this one, I would, somewhat agree. And also, even in newborns, like who haven't had much socialization, and they haven't like acclimated to what the present cultural standards are. Even those like newborns, they have like some strong preferences with respect to which people they find more attractive. Newborns, they want to spend more time with the people whom they find more attractive. I'm not speaking about their mother or father. Well, obviously the newborns want to spend more time with their mother or father regardless of how beautiful or not he or she is, but rather I'm talking about the time they want to spend with strangers, and how they react to strangers. Like if these strangers, they are more objectively beautiful, they want to spend time with them. And as I said, like these newborns, they have virtually no time to acclimate to the culture where some beauty standards are present.
Mm-hmm. I mean, except for the biological parents of these kids, they perceive certain people to be more attractive or pleasant, if you will, because I don't think babies can even comprehend what attractive is. So, is there any explanation to that? Because that's very interesting to me.
I think it well, there are like dual explanations. So one explanation is that if someone is like more athletic and possesses all of these features that are considered traditionally more attractive, then it means uh, that they are more healthy, and that they have more vitality in essence. So I think that is what it points to. So people want to spend time with others like who they think are like more healthy and vital, and they want to avoid interacting with people whom they consider as somehow sickly. So that is one thing. Um, so the other thing is uh, uh, before get to the other thing, I just want to emphasize that many of these arguments, which we are discussing based on evolutionary science, these arguments, it can only be informed by evolutionary science, but no conclusive judgment can be arrived at. I earlier talked about how uh, certain features, it will confer evolutionary advantages on humans and other mammals, you know, and these features, are just conventionally named as attractive. Well, it can be seen the other way too, right? People who possess these features more in abundance, features like that is more attractive. They have more, they're sought after by other people, meaning people seek after beauty in other people, and that is why they have a reproductive advantage. So, that is why I say, looking at evolutionary biology to solve this contention of whether beauty is in the eye of the beholder or not, it doesn't actually solve the problem. It can only inform the problem, because we'll be getting to the heart of the matter. I mean, the heart of the matter is not resolved, like whether the beauty it is present objectively. Is beauty like an inherent is it present inherently in the objects, or is it just in our minds? I don't think this will be solved by science.
Yeah, because even if you talk about things that are attractive to us due to evolutionary reasons, it is again, a result of a process, right? So that just makes it more subjective, even though it appears to be objective.
Right. So the process that you talked about, this whether it's like a cultural process or a biological process that happened like over vast expanse of time.
Hmm.
So what is this process exactly describing? So I would say that this process is describing how, like I said, people seek after other people who are like more attractive, and that confers an evolutionary advantage on beautiful people. So
Right.
I can say it this way too. So yeah, we'll be just getting into the first principles again.
Yes. I think Mahadev posted a quote in the chat which sums it up very beautifully. Mahadev, would you wanna read it out loud, because it definitely makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, actually, this was a quote I really admire a lot. Art is the human disposition of sensible or intelligible matter for an aesthetic end. So, this I reminded of this when we discussed about what baby finds attractive after she born. After he or she is born, a child finds attractive. What she finds attractive, mm, she the child believes who has brought the child upon earth, maybe mother. So basically the first thing we can do is, where the work we do, it has to find it has to be appealing to the mother, because the child only listens to the mother. So the process which we have been discussing all over this time, that which has been evolutionary or biologically, there are some loopholes in the process. Of course, definitely there will be some loopholes, because the process has to be run. So we compromise on some things. But when now is the time we get some time to discuss, so that the process to be need to be changed. So for changing the process, after modernizing the technology, we are abolishing the patriarchy, and we are making more discussions on the gender bias and all those things. So my point I want to make is, the art which we are doing, if the work which we are doing, that needs to be appealing to the baby. For that, the first we need to know that what the baby why the baby is getting attracted to it, why the baby is getting attracted to it, because the mother of the child is telling that this is beautiful, you need to go in this direction. Why she tells that? Because if she finds something meaningful in that work, if she finds something, the work which has been presented to before her, the painting or the entertainment work or the organization which is working wonderfully, like government or other company corporate system, if the essence of the organization is get got go, has been is transparent and is familiar to the mother of the child, definitely she will she will tell that, okay, this is the thing she will deal with. So the work we do, we need to give the confidence to the further generation child. That's how the process which we have been following till now can be changed, I think so. This is the first point. And the second thing is, we discussed about this modernizing, right? uh, a few ideas I want to pitch in is, yes, it's really true that if I tell that, let's go back to the art time or something, it's like ignoring the elephant in the room. So how can we modernize our culture? I want to pitch in one idea here. That is, there is one thing called Manabadi, MANABADI. Manabadi, it's in US. It has been an initiative since some last 4 years. There, the students are the students of America, North American students. They are learning the Indian culture, Indian languages. They are practicing the traditional attire of the country, and they are donating some funds for the worship of this festivities, yearly ones, and they are trying to develop the culture. So why can't we incorporate such culture in our country? We can't incorporate. Why can't we do? Because we are already busy with our corporate lifestyles, and already we are familiarized with our culture. We are not finding something interesting in doing that. So how can we incorporate such practices in our daily life? Maybe one thing that's striking my mind is, uh, there is we need to develop our tourism. There are many tourists coming to India, and if we make some testimonials from the tourists, uh, not only government, how the government has to do, means there must be some representation from youth. I also want to there is some area called Kanchipuram. I'm working as a teacher in Kanchipuram. So I meet with several Germans and several people who who come to the place. I converse with them, and just as a I introduce. And so our youth has to act as a bridge and build a platform that can embrace diversity and bring that conducive environment to the child, which we discussed in prior. And the child might find beauty in our platform, which is my dream. I want to put forth.
So basically, you're talking about how this our own culture can become like objectively beautiful by familiarizing to it to the children or the next generation from a particularly young age.
Yeah, definitely, that's the point. When some representation from other countries, from abroad, when they tell that ours is a great civilization, definitely the child or the mother, they will listen that, okay, this is good. No, we should not incline to that western thing which has been propagated from for long. Of course, they are propagated for long because they have this funding support, and they have this proper polished mindset. We need to develop that mindset. We need to learn from them, and like we have been doing since our independence.
Right. Doesn't that raise the question whether beauty is actually subjective or objective? Because now I'm kind of torn because there is black and white. I mean, it is objective and it is subjective. And then there's a gray scale and there's a lot of grays in between, right? Because if you look at it, what we think is objective is either because of a process that happens to be evolution, but then again, if this process was slightly different, what we perceived as attractive would be slightly or immensely different as well. And the things we perceive as attractive today, or the things people gravitate towards because they find it appealing today, is also like kind of a result of this process of familiarization, right? So it is subjective until it is unfamiliar. It means like you may or may not find it attractive, and then once it is familiarized, it becomes objective, it appeals to the masses. Does that make sense? Like, that is how the thought process is right now in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. It's absolutely sounds good.
There are, as you put it beautifully, Rose, there are so many layers to this one. Like there is some black to it, and there is some white shades to it, but most is like shades of gray, to this particular topic that we're talking about. And, one of the things, that I could make out during the entire discussion is like, uh, well, of course, like we have to emphasize, like developing our own unique Indian identity. So that is good. That is got to be done. But then, like, people wrongly assume that this has got to be done at the expense of discarding any talk of like objective aesthetic standards. Uh, so this is something I want to disagree upon. Because well, the first thing is there are many valuable products of art from our civilization which can be considered like objectively beautiful. And then we can do a lot in promoting that one and understanding those works of art and imbibing like a greater appreciation of that one. And we do not have to at all sacrifice this whole talk about like objective aesthetic standards. What we can instead focus is like what this exactly entails. When we talk about objective aesthetic standards, what it exactly entails, we can discuss about the finer details of that one, and then see which standards they hold under scrutiny and which do not. And I am very sure that the products of our civilization, of our own unique and ancient civilization, it will hold very well under this scrutiny, and that will be enough for us to be proud of our of our creation, and also we'll be like confident enough to even export some of these uh, art products to people of other civilization. We can do all of this comfortably and confidently, while not giving up this notion of objective aesthetic standards. What we can instead do is like talk upon what the final details of this one are.
Right.
The reason why I say that we should not discard this talk about the objective aesthetic standards is uh, I already see many of the harmful aspects that are happening in our society, and especially in Western society, as a consequence of the total wholesale rejection of these standards. Let me explain what I mean. So if one totally agrees with this assessment of about how beauty is entirely in the eyes of the beholder. So what it means is that uh, that our perception of beauty, it's not like an inherent feature of the object. It's rather a product of our mind. So that is what it basically means. So then we are saying, for example, uh, so what it trying to say is in the example of this the comparison of the masterpiece of art and the scribbling by a 5-year-old. So what it is saying is that there is nothing inherently present in these paintings, in the masterpiece painting, which differentiate it from scribblings of 5-year-old. Rather, what is distinct from these two things are the perception that it gives rise to in our mind. And how did these perceptions arise? According to this whole theory of beauty in the eye of the beholder, these perceptions arise due to the cultural and biological forces that we were subject to over millennia, right? And so the next step in this logical flow is that the people who are trying to not conform to the objective beauty standards, what they're in essence trying to do is like just come out of these shackles, these mental shackles that are imposed by by these cultural and biological forces. They want to come out of this shackle and rise above the fray and look at how things actually are. And according to them, the actual things how it is actually are is that objects do not possess qualities which give them like more aesthetic value over other objects. And I think like this is like very wrong, and it is very harmful. And we can see the wrong and the harm being done due to that one, the present society especially in Western society, where like anything and everything goes as a work of art. There is like literally you can see in the Museum of Modern Arts today that like a replica of some mundane everyday thing that will be kept, whether it is like a piece of newspaper or a ball or whatever, the everyday objects that you find, that will be kept, a replica of that one or the actual object that will be kept, and that will be compared to the masterpieces. Because like I just explained what the thought process is through all of this one. So that is why I do not agree to this notion of beauty in the eye of the beholder. Rather, I think these aesthetic standards, like they're objectively present, inherently present in the objects, but then again, as to the finer details of what constitutes what constitutes beautiful, that can be a subject of debate.
Right. So if you think about it, right, if we were to say that beauty is completely subjective and it is only our mind that is making something beautiful and it's not inherently beautiful, right? Even if you think that way, that beauty is a product of your own mind, it still comes down to the fact that your mind can be influenced. So even if it's a product of your mind, is that thought that this thing is aesthetically pleasing to me and I am the beholder that is making it beautiful, is that your own thought, or are you being influenced? That is like a big question to ask if beauty has to be completely subjective, right?
Right. So that is like the $1 million question. Like we can accept that at least some of the standards, for us holding that standards, we are being influenced by our culture, biology. But if you logically follow from that one to say that beauty is not like characteristics of the object in themselves, that is where it becomes like very problematic, and in my case, like downright wrong.
Uh, yeah, we can't find whether the mind is getting influenced or not without we put some action. So first, that's how we have been evolving. We are finding something beautiful, we are putting some action to make it more beautiful, and after that we get bored to it, and we're finding something other new, and finding we are evolving ourselves through that only. We and Moreover, one thing I would like to emphasize, Samarth said, it's really good point. Everything can be found beautiful when we see art in it. That, but when can that happen is the question. That's what we are doing this debate for, and when how to make that happen, how to find the beauty in everything. Definitely, our mind can be influenced. Definitely, our mind, because our mind is a product of our heart, or our thoughts, or our mind is a product of the source through which we get all those inputs from. So what we can do is, we need to inculcate the mindset, we need to inculcate some more discipline, we need to inculcate some more uh, conviction which was taught in our ancient scriptures. So that I feel that that's the only thing. I'm not trying to get nostalgic, or I'm not trying to get more into Brahmin side, but I feel that the only direction we can move towards for cultivating such environment which was portrayed by Samarth, that beauty is found everywhere, we need to check the art in it. For that, we need to go back to our roots, we need to inculcate the product of mind with our roots. And because suppose, let me take one patriarchy. uh, if we go to our grandfather or grandmother, they shout a lot. Why? Because they have been trained since their childhood, their mind has been trained since their childhood that we should not talk to this, what the fuck is this, right? they, because they have been habituated to that. The same habit we can make in a different way when we try to create an environment. For that, for creating that environment, what I'm suggesting is, we need to go back to the Sanskrit texts, or some we need to translate them, or we need to try to inculcate them in our life, and we need to visualize their presence of the ancient source of energy which has developed the world through this point, and we need to proceed further with that energy by getting the by acknowledging that there is a source behind our action, and we need to give back to that source. Then only we can create that environment. That's what I
Thank you
want to.
for, yeah, thank you, Mahadev. For me, I think a more plausible solution for me as an individual would be to look at what is aesthetically pleasing, and if time complies, right? Introspect. Why is it attractive? Is it something that is subconscious? Is it something that is hardwired in you as a human being? Or is it a or is it a result of some influence? And if it is, how is it shaping your life? And if it doesn't serve you, think about ways to let it go and adopt something else.
Right, yeah, I think that is the only way through deliberation and through contemplation, we can, take out all of the weeds and get to the heart of the matter. Yeah, so yeah, I am all for it. I am all for like philosophical deliberation and contemplation and reevaluation of what our like presumptions might be, so that we can arrive at some approximate truth, and even in this matter of aesthetic standards too.
Right. So from this entire session, for me, the concluding statement is that beauty is not subjective or objective. It is both at the same time, like depending on how you think about it, right? Like, even if you think it is subjective, it is a result of objectivity. And if you think it's objective, again, that objectivity is subjective.
Correct. Like I don't see like how in any evaluation of these aesthetic things, like how one can be like totally taken out. It's got it will forever be like an interplay between these two things.
Right. It's like one case where two things can coexist at the same time and still not collide.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, like that.
Yeah, so like with that, I think the only plausible solution is again introspection and letting go of what does not serve you. Because I think most of what we find beautiful will kind of affect our self concept and the way we, kind of stroll through life. So I think introspection and then letting go of what does not serve us is probably the only plausible solution for me.
Got it. Got
You've got any concluding statements before we wind up?
mm, I'll just say that this aesthetic standards, it necessarily involves both the objective and the subjective aspects. And if you're gonna like totally disregard one for the other, like in the present context of beauty in the eye of the beholder, if you're gonna like completely like take away the objective matter, the objectivity part of that one, and if you're gonna say that this aesthetic standards are entirely that it is entirely a product of the human mind, and it is not something that is at least partly present as an inherent characteristics of the objects themselves, I think we are going down a very wrong and a harmful road. Yeah, so that will be my takeaway.
Thank you, Samarth. Mahadev, what about you?
No, nothing to add. You can.
Right, I guess that is the end of our session today. It was great. A lot of very deep thoughts and insights, and I think it was a great discussion overall. So, thank you for being here, and I'll see you guys next week.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I hope everyone has a nice day. Thank you.